Jacobina, it's my last question to you. Religion and sex. How much does religious dogma affect sex life? Do they restrict it? And do you have some examples, maybe, yes, of how religion affects sex? And do you consult other people how to improve their sexual life, sexual intercourse, or you just a sexologist for yourself?
No, I do some consultancies, like on a private basis, especially women, because I think women, historically speaking, we haven't had like a safe space to talk about these things, and there is a lot of disinformation regarding it. So for me, it's very important that if I have this information and someone wants to improve this matter of their lives and I can help them, I will, because I think it's one of the most fundamental parts of the human life itself. Regarding the religion, it will depend a lot in which religion we are talking about. I grew up as a Catholic. I'm coming from a Catholic country, like 95% of the whole population is Catholic. So their sex is seen as mainly as a perversion, like we all have it, but it's something that you will do for reproduction and feel pleasure about it or feel free, especially as a woman. Having this type of practices or feeling free about doing certain stuff sex related, it's very limited, especially because the sexism, all the ignorance regarding this, that sometimes, for example, in my case, I grew up on a Catholic country, and I also stayed there in a Catholic school for 12 years, right? So all my childhood and my teenage, I spent it in a Catholic institution. So that there were a lot of topics were kind of banned, especially in sex related. Like I remember our sex education session, it was one session from the whole year school, and one session of 1 hour. And that's about it. So basically, we just got this guilt, and we like afraid. We got afraid of sex itself because of all the information that we got from the Catholic institution itself. That could be like my experience under that institution. However, for example, I have a friend, he's a priest. He is from the Jesuits, and we were talking once about this matter. And they have the celibate, I think it's in English, that they need to save themselves, right? In every single regard, that includes sex. So, and I told him, like, how do you deal with this? And they actually, like the congregation where he is in, they hired a sexologist, a therapist, and a psychiatrist, and they started having like this conversation with the priest, and they were teaching them like some ways, for example, for masturbation, some practices that they could have with themselves, because this congregation understands that sexual life is very important. It doesn't matter if it's with yourself or if you're sharing it with others, but it's part of the human nature itself. So you cannot take that from a person just because they are priest. And I found that very enlightening, he's a priest, he's from the Jesuits, but they are having this approach to sexuality that is very different from any other congregation in Mexico. So currently, and I asked him, like, how do you feel about it? And he feels very good with his sexual life, that it's in this case, the practices that he does in their daily life, it's just masturbation because all of the circumstance of being a priest, a Catholic priest, and all the stuff doesn't allow him to go further from that practice, but he feels very happy with it because he has all this assistance from the congregation to understand this topic, to understand this side of his personality that we all human beings have.
But it's a sin prohibited by God, and God sees
that depends.
everything.
That depends, for
And
example,
everybody.
From which Catholic approach do you have. So, in this case, the Jesuits, they are way more open related it, and they actually are actively looking for, like, the search of truth, the search of the human essence. It's more a philosophical thing that they have. I really like that congregation. I don't consider myself as a Catholic. However, this approach that they have, for example, with this group of priests, I think is very good. But there are some other places, there are some other congregations that they will see it as sinful. Like, sex is sinful, you just need to have it for procreation, and any other method, like to birth control method, it's also against God's will, for example. So I think that's one of the symptoms, the bad symptoms that we have across Latin America, that even with not all the religion is the Catholic one, we have a few religions all over Latin America, and they mainly share the same vision, that sex is sinful, sex is something that we shouldn't talk about it. And that also brings a lot of other social issues, like, for example, early pregnancies, or child abuse, or STDs, like a lot of issues that potentially could be prevented by information, by the access of accurate information of sexual practices.
Don't you think that a religion is an evil?
I don't think the religion itself is evil. I think evil could be the person who is in charge or spreads that ideology. I just see it as another ideology that a lot of people need it. Like, and I understand why people, they had faith on something. Like, I consider myself atheist, but I also understand why some people, they see in Islam the truth, and some other in Buddhism, and some other in Catholicism, and some other in whichever religion. They need hope, and if that works for them, that's fine. I respect any belief that doesn't hurt or doesn't try to avoid the existence of other. Like, for example, even the Satanist church in Texas, when all this abortion legislation started to happen, the Satanist church, when you think about a Satanist church, you could think the worst, right? Because all the television, all the movies, all everything about them sounds horrifying. Sounds like
Yes,
sacrilege.
Yes, I just think about church.
But for example, the Satanists, what they did, they were giving a lot of economical resources to the people who were going to the streets and being all these demonstrations against the new legislation of abortion. So they were giving the sponsors of that fight. That I think it's pretty good. So I understand why people believe in that. I understand why some people like to live under those rules. And I will respect that if they do not try to
Interrupt.
harm or avoid or nullify the existence of another person.
No. Yeah, I agree. Jacobina, thank you so much for this interesting conversation, long and your answers so great, so sincere. And thank you.
My pleasure.